You want to know why you're broke in one of the richest countries on earth? Let me paint you a picture that'll make your blood boil. Toronto suburbs. A high school teacher buys a house. Red brick, 3 bedrooms, big backyard with a maple tree. Price tag, $180,000. She's driving a Honda Civic, living on a teacher's salary. And you know what? The math actually works. Mortgage gets paid, groceries covered, a little left over for retirement. This is the promise. The Canadian dream in its purest form. Flash forward to right now, 2026. That exact same house just hit the market, same bricks, same maple tree. New price, $2.2 million. But here's where it gets sick. There's no family living there anymore. The basement's been carved into a separate unit, 3 international students sleeping on mattresses on a concrete floor. The main level, a couple, both pulling 6 figures, both professionals who did everything right, and they're so buried in debt, they're terrified to have a child. This is a crime scene. No blood, no yellow tape, just a polite country that decided to cannibalize its own children. If you're under 40 in Canada, listen to me very carefully. You are not crazy, you are not entitled, you are not lazy. You are the victim of a 40-year economic experiment that went catastrophically, violently wrong. You're living in a nation that stopped building the future and started eating the present. Today, we're ripping off the polite Canadian mask. We're exposing the math that the news won't show you. We're documenting the exact mechanism that transformed a G7 industrial powerhouse into a glorified real estate Ponzi scheme with a flag. This is how the dream became a nightmare. Let's go back. To understand why you feel poor in a rich country, you need to understand that the word rich changed its meaning while you weren't looking. 20th century rich? That meant you made things. Productivity rose, wages followed, you built cars, steel, technology. You were a factory. 21st century Canada? We became a casino. The data is screaming this. OECD projections for the next 30 years, your career, your retirement, your entire economic life, show Canada dead last among advanced economies. Worst performing. Bottom of the barrel. Why? We caught a disease called the productivity trap. For 2 decades, while Americans built trillion-dollar tech empires in Asia, constructed advanced manufacturing ecosystems, Canadian business made a calculation. Why risk $10 million on innovation, on R&D, on building something real, when you can buy a plot of dirt, sit on it for 5 years, and watch tax-free millions materialize out of thin air? This is the hidden weapon destroying you, the asset economy. We built a system where owning beats doing every single time. Think about the psychological warfare of this. You work, you pay income tax, payroll tax, sales tax, you contribute. You're a productive citizen. Meanwhile, someone who bought a house in Kitsilano in 2005 made more money sleeping last year than a heart surgeon made saving lives. That house appreciated tax-free. The surgeon paid 53% marginal rate. The message is crystal clear. Labor is for peasants. Assets are for royalty. And this brings us to the villains, not a person, a structure. The oligopoly. Walk into an American grocery store, 50 choices. Canada, 3 companies control everything. Want a cell phone plan? Europeans pay 20 euros for unlimited data. You, $80 Canadian for a data cap from 2012. Canada is 3 mining companies, 5 banks, and 3 grocery chains wearing a trench coat pretending to be a country. These monopolies are protected, shielded from foreign competition by your own government. This is why you pay the highest fees on earth for banking, internet, air travel. This is the invisible tax of being Canadian. Every time you tap that card, a percentage gets siphoned to a shareholder class that faces zero competition, stagnant wages from dead productivity, sky-high costs from protected monopolies. That's the squeeze. But it's not the kill shot. The kill shot is housing. 1. The world's housing bubbles exploded. Canada's didn't. We celebrated. We said our banks were stable, our system superior. But we didn't fix the problem. We made it terminal. We dropped interest rates to 0 and kept them there. We invited global capital to park in Canadian condos. We transformed housing from a human right into a speculative financial instrument traded like cryptocurrency. The result? Feudalism. I'm not being dramatic. This is literal feudalism, a system where your status is determined entirely by your relationship to land. If you're young in Canada today, your financial future has nothing to do with your intelligence, your work ethic, your education. It depends on one thing: the bank of mom and dad. Parents own property, they leverage it, gift you a down payment, you enter the castle, you become landed gentry. Parents rent, you're a serf. You'll spend 60-70% of your after-tax income paying someone else's mortgage. You're funding their retirement with your poverty. This is the intergenerational war nobody in Ottawa will admit exists. Baby boomers, not blaming individuals, they just played the game, are sitting on trillions in real estate wealth. They vote to restrict supply. They vote to keep neighborhoods quaint and low density. They show up at city council meetings to kill every apartment building. They're pulling up the ladder. And when you look up, you realize it's gone. This creates what they politely call delayed adulthood. What a sick euphemism for tragedy. 1970s, average first-time buyer was 25. Today, in major cities, 37, 38. That's 15 stolen years. Think about what dies in those years. You don't have kids because there's no bedroom. Canada's fertility rate just collapsed to 1.33, all-time low. We are literally dying out because we made reproduction too expensive. You don't start that business because you can't risk missing rent. Homelessness is one paycheck away. So you take the safe corporate job, you suffocate your potential. You don't move for better opportunities because you're terrified of losing rent control. You're trapped, geographically imprisoned. This is how a dynamic nation becomes a stagnant museum. Now let me show you the accelerant, the policy that turned a fire into an apocalypse, the population bomb. For years, the consensus was immigration equals good. Culturally? Sure, Canada's welcoming. But economics is cold math, supply and demand. The government recently spiked population growth to sub-Saharan Africa levels. Over 1 million people in 1 year. Know how many homes we built? How many hospital beds? How many transit seats? We brought in hundreds of thousands of temporary residents and international students. These students were sold a lie. Recruiters in India and Nigeria promised them opportunity. They arrived to find 4 people sleeping in a Brampton room, delivering Uber Eats in a blizzard, paying extortionate tuition to diploma mills that exist solely to print permanent residency paperwork. This isn't immigration, it's a labor supply shock. Flooding the market with desperate workers gave the oligopolies a gift. Why invest in automation? Why increase wages? Just hire a terrified student for minimum wage. Wages suppressed for workers and youth. Rent demand skyrocketing. This was a wealth transfer from the poor who rent to the rich who own progressive branding, robber baron execution. So where does this leave you? The 28-year-old in a basement apartment? Cognitive dissonance. You walk past luxury Vancouver condos, empty, owned by shell companies. You watch grocery prices climb weekly. Politicians brag about GDP growth, but GDP growth means nothing when population grows faster. That's called dilution. The pie gets bigger, but 1 million more people are holding forks. Your slice shrinks. Per capita GDP is falling. We're getting poorer, materially, measurably poorer. And the debt, the invisible chain. Canadians are among the most indebted humans on the planet. We bought the lie that debt is wealth. We used houses as ATMs, leased cars we couldn't afford. Now interest rates normalized. Free money's over. The hangover's starting. Enter the negative amortization mortgage, a horror show. You make your monthly payment, but it doesn't cover interest. Your debt grows every month while you pay. You're a debt slave. Literally. The government's trapped too. They know housing's a bubble, but they can't let it pop. Real estate and construction are such massive GDP components that if housing crashes, the entire economy evaporates. Banks insolvent, pension funds obliterated, so they prop it up. 30-year amortizations, buying mortgage bonds. Anything to keep air in the balloon. This is the suicide pact. To save the economy, sacrifice the young. To save the young, crash the economy. They chose to sacrifice you. This is why you're poor. Mathematically, systematically, the machine is extracting wealth from your future to pay for the past's mistakes. You're funding healthcare for a generation that didn't save. You're paying for infrastructure not updated in 40 years. You're paying rent that sustains the asset class lifestyle. But here's where tragic becomes dangerous. The brain drain. You're a talented Waterloo engineer, a McGill doctor, an Alberta welder. Why stay? Look south. America has problems, massive ones. But you can buy a house in Texas for 1/3 of a Toronto shack's price. Earn double in tech or medicine. The best are leaving. Voting with their feet. Who's left? The old, the indebted, those who can't afford to escape. Death spiral. As the tax base leaves, taxes on those remaining must rise, which drives more to leave. Canada's becoming a boutique hotel for global elites, staffed by a permanent underclass of temp workers with a hollowed-out middle wondering what happened to their country. Polite apocalypse. No tanks, just lease signs. Moving trucks heading for the border. Silent despair in young eyes. But this isn't just Canada. This is the Western world on fast forward. We're the laboratory. The test case for what happens when you prioritize financialization over production. You cannot build a nation selling lattes and condos to each other. Eventually, you run out of money. Is there a way out? Yes, but it's agonizing. Breaking the oligopolies. Massive rezoning to flood supply and crash housing prices. Tax codes rewarding work, punishing speculation. Political courage to tell boomers, your house is not a retirement fund. It's a house, and its value needs to crash so your grandchildren can live. Until that happens, the young will stay poor, because they are poor. Asset poor in a world where assets are everything. If you feel that chest tightness paying rent, that hopelessness browsing listings, acknowledge it. It's not in your head. It's in the numbers. You're living through the great deleveling. The rich country story is a ghost, a memory from before the factories closed and the towers rose. The question isn't, when can I buy a home? It's, what are you going to do about it? Accept serfdom, fight for policy change, or join the caravan heading for the exit? The Canadian dream isn't dead, but it's on life support. And it's waiting for you to decide, follow it south or resurrect it from the ashes of a credit bubble. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, Canada is rhyming with a cautionary tale.